One.
Good afternoon and welcome to our YWCA Facebook Live event, our Connect, Heal, Learn speaker series. I'm Laura Gomez-Horton, Clinical Director of the YWCA Greater Austin. For those who are unfamiliar, YWCA is on a mission to eliminate racism, empower women, stand up for social justice, help families, and strengthen communities, and has been at the forefront of most of the pressing social movements such as voting rights, civil rights, pay equity, violence prevention, accessible healthcare, and others. Nationwide, YWCAs vary in the programming provided as they respond to the community needs in each of their locales, but all are guided by the overall mission. Today's discussion has been prompted by the continual efforts to bring attention to harsh realities that affect us all and the advocacy efforts that we have towards change. It is no surprise, as I point out, that we are not even halfway through the year, yet we have experienced unimaginable tragedy, violence, and hate, from policies and racism that continue to oppress marginalized communities to community violence, including the elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, which affected a lot of our communities. These events, as well as others, spark outright grief, disbelief, and mobilization. Today's discussion brings together three amazing people, each representing a local YWCA in Texas. We have Naya Diaz from Austin, Texas, Francesca Rattray from San Antonio, and Kayla Suarez from El Paso. So let's get started with introductions. Can each of you tell us a little bit about who you are, your connection to YWCA, and a little of your background and your journey that has led you to where you are today?
Go for it. So I'm Naya Diaz. I am the executive director here at YWCA in Austin. I'm actually coming at you all from Chicago alongside my compañera here, Kayla. We're at a YWCA USA conference. So we're lucky to have each other here and in this group. So, but yeah, so I've been with the organization for about 3 years. I'm originally from the Rio Grande Valley. And I've been doing social justice work for a while, and I'm actually really excited to be working with YWCA in Austin because we have a strong intersection between social justice and mental health, and it's really informing the way that we're working around policy, around programming, and all these things that are needed at this time. So that's kind of me, and that's what I've been doing. So yeah.
I'm Kayla Suarez. I'm from YWCA El Paso Norte region, and I'm from El Paso, grew up there. I've been with YWCA El Paso for almost 6 years, and I started in the marketing communications department. I still do oversee that work that we do, but just always had been passionate for many years about, I didn't know it was the YWCA mission at the time, but that's what it is. And so when I started in my role and there was vacancy and turnover, so just ended up kind of stepping into that role to help our social equity department and to really integrate that into all of the work that we do. We have childcares, we have fitness centers, we have a transitional living center for survivors of domestic violence, several different housing programs. So we do a lot of that work and just trying to make sure that we keep our mission at the forefront of everything we do.
Great. And I am Francesca Rattray, CEO of YWCA San Antonio. I love working with our sisters. There are 6 of us in Texas, and we've come together multiple times for movements and advocating. I've been at YWCA San Antonio for 4 years. I've been in San Antonio for 17, and I've been in the nonprofit world for what seems like my entire life. I'm the connecting theme to my work has been empowering women and alleviating poverty. And here in San Antonio, our mission is the same as all of the other YWCAs, to empower women and eliminate racism. And we do that locally by removing barriers for women to break the cycle of poverty and become self-sufficient. Childcare, youth economic empowerment, health and racial justice advocacy, and we are just now getting into housing. So that's our focus, and we collectively worked to eliminate racism and empower women as a network.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, a room full of knowledge and experiences. As I mentioned in the beginning, we've had experienced so much already this year. We have had fight for reproductive rights. We've had book bans, voter suppression, lack of access to healthcare, and of course, mass shootings. How have these events impacted you, and what helps you keep moving? And this can be anyone. This is potluck. Anybody jump in.
So I think in El Paso, we recently we partnered with our city council and the public libraries to they passed a resolution to have a banned book section in every public library. And we are working with our community to get donations for those books. And it was really, at first, I remember our CEO started talking about it and I was like, but books aren't really banned, right? Like I just wasn't in that same mindset. I hadn't done the research, and that was a couple years ago. And then we did start seeing, hearing about books being challenged and banned and lists going out kind of ominously, Mouse in Tennessee. So all of that was happening right at the time we were working with city council. And when you look at the list of books that have been challenged and banned, and the American Library Association has data on this, but it was like, well, first of all, it's books that we've all read. And it's books that help people through things. So we, a Judy Blume book is on there because it talks about like periods and it's, and then there's books that have helped people process trauma, like from sexual assault in communities of color, which is not something that's talked about very often. And so sometimes you really do have to turn to literature. And of course it's stories about, people of color, LGBTQ people, and those are the stories that are being silenced. And for us, it was very much like, it's important to see yourself represented in literature, of course, but it's also important to see people who don't look like you. So we want the students who were straight, white, male to see characters who are not that, and to normalize those differences in people so that it doesn't become a big deal down the road. So we started, that was one thing. And Naya and I have been talking about the Uvalde shooting all week, and El Paso was a victim of a mass shooting that was very explicitly racially motivated. And so those moments, I remember like the Monday after that, being in the office and just nobody was talking. Nobody was like, meetings were canceled because people just couldn't function essentially. And so to say like what keeps us moving forward, I guess, is just because we have to, because these things can't keep happening, because people deserve to see their stories represented, and we can't keep allowing these things to happen.
Yeah, I echo what was just said by Kayla. I think for us, we have Monet Munoz, who's our empowerment and youth director, who's also from El Paso. So I remember when that happened, and I talked to her, and she's like, let me call you right back. I have to check to see if my family's okay. And it hit me like, wow, okay, this is, and then everybody was fine, but the repercussion of it was felt in our office. So yeah, I mean, I feel like, with Uvalde recently, I think for me, it did stop me in my tracks at work. Like I was, I think we were like, trying to write a grant or something, Laura, and I just kind of had to stop and just feel my emotions and just think about what that meant for our community in Texas, a community that sits in, next to San Antonio, close to the border, a brown community, another brown community, because El Paso is also largely brown and largely Hispanic, and that these communities get affected not just in this traumatic way, but there's just a sense of like it hits you in a lot of different directions. There's the trauma, there's the loss, there's the grief, there's the, as Laura says, a fight and freeze that happens, and it happens in different ways for different people. But then there's all these I don't want to call them secondary, because I almost feel like they should just kind of be in the same wavelength. But there's education, the fear of students going back to school. There's parents. I keep hearing parents say, I'm going to send my children for homeschooling. And I'm like, well, not everybody can afford to do that. Right. So there's a lot of, privilege that's that comes out even in these conversations. And then just kind of like the regression of economic stability, educational stability that came to my mind. I'm not an expert in speaking at that, but I just, those were the things that were happening in my head. And then and how we were just all numb for a second, and then we wanted to embrace each other. I called our staff, had a conversation. I talked to my family. I called Francesca. I called Dr. Acosta in El Paso, and different people in our communities to see how they were dealing with it, because it just felt almost numbing for me. So we've also been involved with the book bans in a little slightly, almost very similar, but in a little bit of a different way. In El Paso, one of our board members is very active in this fight. We had an action about a month ago with Libro Traficantes at the Capitol, and we've been trying to form underground libraries, so in the communities where people can have a number of books that Kayla just mentioned, or more, and just kind of forming a network in our community so that people can create these underground libraries. And that's already starting to take form. But there's just so many things. I feel like almost it feels like a whiplash every time we wake up. It's like, whew, so, but there's there's that. And then there's reproductive rights that, we've been dealing with SB 8 for almost a year. We're almost going to have a year dealing with SB 8. It feels like it just happened yesterday. I know, Laura, you work with a lot of in your program where you see clients that may be directly affected by this because they were once potentially a woman that was seeking abortion services or not. But, we were dealing with that at that time and just kind of reflecting about what this means. Somebody earlier here in Chicago called our state hostile. And I was like, that's a perfect word to describe what it feels like in Texas right now, and just kind of under attack. And I know, Francesca, the war on women and children in Texas. And then also just the voter suppression that's happening, right? The gerrymandering, the redlining, all the redistricting that's happening to just continue to do that, the oppressiveness. And then it just creates more of a fight for those of us that are truly trying to support those that are truly living in the margins. So those are my feelings, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I want to lift up what you said there about as a war. When right after Uvalde, numbness is what hit me. And, as women, we bear the brunt of the pain. I had teachers in my childcare center come and say they don't want to send their children to school. And can I bring my children with me to work? My numbness came from this feeling of helplessness as a woman, as a mother, as a leader of a women's empowerment organization. It just feels like in Texas right now, there's a war on poor women and children in the name of morality. And what is morality? And we have to get out from under this helplessness. And as I said to my team said to me, this is why we're here. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and also promote peace and nonviolence. And so if we teach our children in childcare about love and using your words and nonviolence, they'll grow up to live that. We teach our teachers and families about trauma-informed care. We'll grow up and live that and prevent, hopefully, incidents like Uvalde again in the future? We don't know. It doesn't come from just changing behavior. We've got to change policy. And that's why we all come together. We've come together in the past, and we're hoping to come together to do something about this going forward.
Thank you. I mean, hearing y'all talk about that, I mean, it seems like the connecting theme around that is oppression. You know, it's like with the book ban, it's like knowledge is power. We've heard that many times before. So when you keep people uninformed or unrepresented, then that decreases any kind of power that you might have, even personal power. And same thing with violence. It's like that's an excellent way of keeping people oppressed, and economic disempowerment also. All those have that common theme of keeping someone in power and other people without the power. I know you mentioned a little, Francesca, about, you know, we've come together before. What do you all see as maybe a driving force this time? You know, I mean, we mentioned all the events, and these events have always happened, but, you know, right now it seems very, very raw. So what's prompting you all to come together this time?
I think if it's okay, I'll start. I think what prompted us to start, and I know you're helping us moderate, Laura, but I might invite you into this into this as well, because you're in Austin as well. But I think when we started our support groups in Austin, it was an opportunity to see, we were, as therapists in Austin, I'm not a therapist, Laura is, but I think in those kind of spaces, you see a lot of emotions that you're navigating, and you're helping facilitate. And these are not normal times, right? There's cultural reckoning, there's grief, there's loss, there's isolation, and just helping people navigate those feelings. And then how do you hold that container so that somebody can use that anger or that grief or that loss to mobilize, right? And helping them move in those directions, whether it's advocacy or policy work, or working in their communities to reproduce some of the knowledge that they're gaining even here at the YWCA or in their communities. So I feel like what prompted me, and in conversation with Laura and our team, is that I think we need to have a larger conversation about how we harness people's emotions into this productive way and channel it in a way that makes change, that will move the needle, and not just in this talking theoretical, philosophical way, but like actually policy change, right? One of the things that we talk about in Austin is that sometimes we work through healing is actually a force to mobilize. It prompts you. It's a way to deal with your emotions. So I think that's also one way that we want to look at this. And that we just had a panel earlier today. Kayla was there in the room with me, and we were talking about this continuum of like people are in different spaces in their advocacy and understanding what's happening in the world. Some people are waking up, or some people have been woken up, and they're just further along in their journey. And so we want to invite like just different voices about whether you're in the continuum of, you're like what they call it, stepping into the fray, or you have been in that fray, and then like having a conversation amongst all of us so that we can work together in all of our respected sites, and just kind of YWCA come together and say, enough is enough. We're going to represent women. We're going to represent people of color, women of color, especially to stop the oppression, the privilege that people feel when they don't have to talk about oppressive things like this. And that we want to make a change. We want to invite people from our communities, legislators, policymakers, mothers, daughters, advocates, leaders, to join us in this fight around, what does it mean to talk about justice in Texas right now? What does it mean to talk about dignity, to talk about somebody's invite their whole being into this conversation, whether that is somebody that's marching alongside you or not, and then having a conversation to see where we can move forward. And then also, healing. Healing is how we're looping this back around. So part of the conversation with my Las Hermanas here in Texas is about that, right, for me. And so that's kind of how we've started having these conversations.
And I think what Naya just said, so everyone out, like behind Francesca, you see like the core part of the YWCA mission, right? Eliminating racism and empowering women. But the full statement is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. And for me and for YWCA El Paso, the dignity part is just like, that's what really gives you chills, right? Because that's the most basic thing that a human deserves. And so being from El Paso, where we had, children in cages, and we've had, people just dropped off in the middle of the night at a bus station with no phones, no money, no food, and then told like, okay, find your way to the next step. And the community stepping up to help those people, that dignity part is what's missing, and to an extent, it's like, I don't care where you are on your, speaking of immigration, what you think should happen, what you believe. This is a person, and they're here, and they deserve to be treated like a person and with dignity. And so I think those were kind of reckonings for us across Texas. But beyond that, we're all, like Naya said, as individuals, we're all in different places, but as organizations, we're all in different places, and we all do different services. And it was funny, we were just sitting in this room an hour ago, and we were like, oh, I'm from El Paso. And she said, oh, I was in San Antonio for a conference not that long ago. And I was like, oh, okay, that's like 8 hours away. like that's not, yes, you were in Texas, but you're not close to me. It was different weather, different climate, it's very different. And she's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how big it is. And so I think that geographic difference can be seen in how, for El Paso, how we feel we're heard at a legislative level in Austin. We have our representatives who are very responsive, but it doesn't feel like on a wider vision that we get the visibility. And so I think together, like, as Naya says, as sisters, as organizations with the same mission, that we kind of realized recently that we have so much power and strength together. And so we really want to harness that.
Yeah, so policy-wise, we too have had more luck on the local level in advocating for, in 2020, racism as a public health crisis, and specifically how you see that play out with maternal and child health. And our high maternal mortality rates. We've also worked with our city council to pass a resolution for pay equity, which is something that YWCA San Antonio has advocated for since we received a grant for it from United Way of San Antonio in 2019, creating awareness about the wage gap between white men and women of color, and our city council came through with that. So there is ways for us to advocate, on all of us to advocate locally, in a way that we can have it bubble up to the state level, and coming together like we're doing now for collective impact for Texas legislative briefings, which is something we did last January, and actually meeting with our representatives at the state level, I think is a way to mobilize more support for policy change.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, everything you're saying totally resonates, especially, I know I come from more the mental health perspective, but I mean, we work from that relational cultural model, which states that, healing happens in connection, and hurt and trauma happens in disconnection. So I think coming together, we all might be hurt in some ways, but as you come together, you have more power, you have more voice, more visibility, and definitely helping one another out. Like Naya was saying, you're helping somebody else out. It also feels good. It also feels empowering to you as you're helping others out. So definitely that happens. But there are things that continue trying to keep people separated. One is distance. Yes, Texas is very large. But also there are actually policies and systemic things in place that keep us separated, that keep us pinned against one another in some ways, and form those barriers to change. So what might you all do to stay on this path of connection and to stay on this path of working together while still doing the things that your local communities need to do? Because yes, we are all very different.
I think we've talked a little bit about having kind of like a convening of YWCAs. Like we've never, I mean, this is the first time I've met Naya in person. I've never met Francesca in person, though I've been on several Zooms with her. So I'm very familiar with like this part of her. So I think, I don't know how tall she is. She's like
Short.
Yeah. So I think being able to connect, you know, in person and being able to really sit down and map out our goals as women, as YWCAs, as what we would like to see accomplished, and who has the best resources, the strength, the power, how we can get those things done. And just really being intentional. I think that we're all really committed to this.
I'll just add, you know, we've come together for funding resources to present a collective request to maximize our impact. We work together extremely well on that, and other opportunities. We've been exploring other opportunities to do that. And Naya actually led the way on this one to get, you know, I could tell when we first talked after Uvalde that you had enough, and that we had to do something. So she has been spearheading efforts to do. I know she has several to-dos for us. So what are they, Naya? Would you like to talk about them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, I mean, yeah, so we will be working through together. I think Kayla and I even have been brainstorming around just kind of creating an entity around Texas and working with YWCA USA to support us in a way that where we can collectively have a space to do that in. But then also, you know, being more public facing, joining, you know, those that are watching us, joining us in conversation around all the different 4 issues. So, you know, we've been talking about mass shootings, we've been talking about book bans, we've been talking about reproductive rights and voter suppression. There's many more. I mean, I feel like I said earlier, it feels like a whiplash. Every day we're waking up to something new. But one of the things I wanted to mention just as we're thinking through this is that I was talking to Dr. Acosta, who couldn't join us today, but I was telling Kayla about it on the phone the other day. And we were talking about how she feels that there's just a sense of complacency. There's a sense of cynicism. There's a sense of hopelessness when we're talking about this, because people that are wanting to do the change just kind of feel like they're being slapped around just all the oppression. So how do we wake up every morning to do this work? And so we were referencing Miriam Kabi, where we mentioned that hope is actually a discipline. And one of my other colleagues here in Chicago said, you know, hope and agency is a discipline. So agency to believe that you have the right to have hope for a better tomorrow. Nobody gets to take that away from us, right? But it does require, you know, we're not talking this Pollyanna, naive, gullible way. We're talking about solidarity and clarity in this movement. And then just, you know, kind of doing the work and doing it together, because I think that's the important thing, is that we just can't do this alone. We need to do it together. And the more the merrier, the more the collective is a strong place to do that in. So
Annie just gave us this sign from behind the laptop, so I think they're going to be using this room in a couple of minutes. We might need to.
All right, so we'll start working on closing up here. I do want to say though that Naya, I've heard you mention twice about the whiplash, and I think that that's by design. I think if you keep people separated on different causes, on different topics, and because we vary on our belief system, we vary on our experiences, and may not understand another person's experiences, that's what keeps us separated. So yeah, if we can come to that joining point as a community, I'm not just talking about YWCA, but as a community where we can listen to each other and remember, you know, oh, not just the cause of the day, but, or no, now there's a new horrible thing that happened. Now we need to put all our energy there. Splitting our energy That's by design. That is totally by design, and that's what keeps us oppressed. But since we're needing to wrap up now, I want to give you all just a quick moment of saying anything that you might want to tell the community out there, maybe whatever last words you would like to leave with.
I'll jump in because I want to lift up what Naya just said about hope, which I thought was beautiful. You know, we've been through so much over the last 2 years. It feels like there is no hope. It's one thing after another. And, you know, we're all in need of healing and mental health, which is a barrier to feeling hope. But you're right, Naya, that hope is a discipline. And YWCA stands for more than just service delivery and advocacy, but we aim to create hope in the communities that we serve, the women that we serve, the communities of color that we serve. And that is why we're here. That is what we need to remind our staff every day, our clients that we serve, to get up out of bed, that it's the small daily practices of hope that can bring about change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I would just say, so when we did our banned books project with the city of El Paso, we did an unveiling, and the theme of that was like, every story matters, right? And the reason that was, we just wanted to show that everybody, like I said, everybody needs to be represented. You need to see stories from everywhere. And I think that that's something we can all take with us, is just your story matters, the person next to you, their story matters, whatever their experience. And that can inform our advocacy moving forward and our programs moving forward. It can inform a lot.
And I think we actually have to wrap up, y'all, because people are walking in. But everything Francesca and Kayla just said and beyond. But yeah, more to come. I think just, you know, follow all of our social medias. I think there's going to be a lot of us collectively talking about all this, and you know, we'll share more as in the next few days, weeks coming.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your amazing knowledge and work. I'd like to remind everyone to keep the conversation going. And if you want to get involved to eliminate social injustices, please connect with your local YWCA. Thank you.
Thank you.